My name is Tyler Gingrich. I've lived in Kelowna for a relatively short time. Can people hear me? Just a little louder like that? I've lived in Kelowna for a relatively short time. It'll be about 5 years this summer. I've heard it said from several people in isolation of each other, this is a hard community to break into, isn't it? And why is that? Presumably people live here for similar reasons that I live here, for the natural beauty, for amenities of the city without it being like Vancouver, and some job opportunities. But that said, it's a competitive place to live, and a statistic I heard recently said that Kelowna is the most expensive place to live when looking at house prices versus what wages tend to be. So what does this mean for the ways in which we relate? I've had something to do with the Poverty and Homelessness Action Team, and I'm on the board for In From the Cold. And without a doubt, there is abject poverty in our midst. This, in a community with great wealth as well. I've wondered about poverty in the midst of wealth and whether it influences how close we're willing to get to one another. That is, a great disparity between rich and poor is indicative of a system where there are those who are stockpiling wealth on the backs of those with little or nothing. I'm a Lutheran pastor of a congregation that meets in a house in Glenmore, and having grown up in the church, I'm conscious of how institutionalized Christianity has often been of the mind that people are to arrive at church showered, shoes polished, and in their best Sunday clothes. And you know what I mean when I say Sunday clothes. And it's probably not a written rule, but it's assumed. And what does that do to our perception of those around us and the world? If we believe that community is made up of those who present a certain way, then those who don't aren't really welcome, are they? We have certain principles and values that we follow as a society, and we assume they must apply to others. And that is a prevailing attitude in this area. Think about the assumptions made by many Christian churches about people's attitudes on matters of welcome of people that are marginalized generally, and those living in poverty specifically. You can see for yourself where restrictive views have been imposed on others, especially vulnerable groups, around engaging issues such as the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer community, or polarized views on abortion. Assumptions are made about how life works, and such restrictive views have inhibited diversity and a desire to understand other people. Though I am thankful for signs of change, such as students being drawn to study at UBCO, or the Okanagan Rainbow Coalition and its beautiful rainbow mural downtown, as a couple of examples. Yay! A theologian who I admire very much has stated some primary marks of the Christian life, and I believe these can apply to anyone connected with church community or not. They are: be generous, show hospitality, do not covet, do not seek vengeance, and observe Sabbath rest. In effect, aren't these also good for community living? How can we not care about the well-being of our neighbor if we are showing hospitality and being generous? How can we fight if we're about nonviolence and not coveting? And if we are clear about having time off each week or each year, even each day, then we can be rested, reflective, and begin to have time to step back and see what is important in the big picture. It's hard to be in relationship with others. It's hard to engage with those not like us. And community is being threatened by virtually every organization these days. But we must work at being a community and seeking understanding with one another. We must see that we share common humanity and that we are to strive to care for each other. And I invite you to risk being vulnerable yourself for the sake of others. And I'm delighted you're all here, because this is a sign of that, being willing to risk something of yourself for the other. So give yourselves a hand.